This tutorial will review the process of sample submission using Webtrieve. Creating an online sample submission electronically saves time and avoids filling out all of the criteria by hand on the sample information form when you submit samples to the laboratory. First, log in with your assigned username and password, and then choose the Samples menu. Then select Sample Submission. You will see a list of every individual compartment that you have in the database. In this example, we have 290 items, which we can filter by page. Either at 10 items per page, or we can view 100 items per page. Decide what is most convenient for you. Next, we can narrow our results by populating with either the unit ID or the serial number. Normally, one unit will be sampled and multiple compartments of that unit will also be sampled. The best way to accomplish this is to bring up the unit by either unit serial number or the unit ID. For this demonstration, we will use unit ID DT033 and then select Search. This brings up all compartments for unit DT033. To create a sample submission for an engine sample, click the checkbox for only the engine. This can be done for full service to include oil samples on all of the compartments, and in this case, select the checkbox at the top to highlight all. If the cooling system wasn't sampled on the service, simply uncheck that one. Now we are ready to submit the samples. In the upper right corner, under Further Actions, select Submit Samples. This next screen is the second of a total of 3 screens used when doing online sample submissions. On the far left side in the first column, we see the unit ID is displayed. Moving across columns, we see company name, compartment name, UID number, and the date sampled. If the sample collection date is not correct, change the date and then select the down arrow to fill all compartments with the revised date. Or change the date individually as necessary for each compartment. The unit time meter information is also required. This is the unit service meter information, or the total number of hours or kilometers that the unit has run. This information is taken from the odometer or the hour meter. If the sample has been collected correctly, the total machine hours will be indicated on the sample bottle label. Using this data, populate the unit time meter field. If the incorrect information is entered, the calculated fluid age, filter age, etc. will have quite high levels. When updated to the correct hours, everything looks much more normal. If unsure about the hours for the unit, for example, if the collected sample was mislabeled with only the service hours for the engine, such as 500 service hours, go back to this wrench icon on the far left to view the last service history. Open up the window for the engine and it will show the service history unit age, in this case 46,187 total hours on the unit. Compare this to the 500 hours written on the bottle label, and obviously this will need to be updated to total machine hours. For this example, we add 500 to the previous service for a total of 46,687. With the correct hours populated, you see that the program is calculating the time on oil for all of the compartments. This calculation is based on what was previously selected for the fluid and the filter changed. By default, it will populate yes for the fluid change on the engine because it is most likely that the engine oil will be changed at each service. All of the other compartments are defaulted to no, and these can be individually updated to Yes/No tab as needed. scroll to the right and similarly update Filter Changed information. As before, you can auto-populate all items using the arrow at the top of the column. The same process applies for Fluid Top-Up. For example, if the hydraulic system has had 50 liters of top-up, enter that information. Scrolling further right is the Work Order field. This field can be used relative to your particular business and your own work order information as necessary. This work order column is also a searchable field within Webtrieve. In the next column to the right is the Comment field. If the engine shows a high level of fuel or you suspect a fuel dilution, you can enter that information here and this data will come through to the laboratory. The final column is Fluid. The default fluid is attached to the compartment, and if the fluid indicated needs to be changed, click on the search icon to select the correct fluid, searching through the pop-up menu for the correct fluid. In the upper left of this pop-up window are 3 buttons: In Use, Complete List, and View Selected. The In Use button will show a list of all of the oils currently in your database. You can search through the listed oils and make your selection. If the oil you need is not listed, simply click on the Complete List and all available oils in the database are available for you to select. Columns can be filtered using the name, manufacturer, or grade in the sorting window. After all information is entered, it's time to print a sample submission label. The sample submission label can be printed as a thermal sticky label to be placed directly on the sample bottle, or you can print an original sample information form, which is 5 labels on 1 letter-sized piece of paper. With all information entered correctly, save the changes and the program will advance to the next screen, revealing a list. This list shows all of the sample submissions entered for the DT033 unit. If you have another unit to be entered, for example DT032, go back to the sample submission at the top and repeat the same process for any other remaining units. All units will be added to this list until you are ready to print. When ready to print all of these labels, choose Print Selection in the column to the right, and then choose the correct printer from the drop-down menu. One of the most common printers is the Brother 62x100. Once the printer is selected, a print preview screen is available and will show all of the labels to be printed. Proceed to print and apply the adhesive labels to the sample bottles. There's no need to write on the sample's information form because all of the information is captured within this printed label and within the barcode. Notice now in this screen, all of the sample submissions have disappeared. If the printer runs out of labels or doesn't print, there is no need to repeat the whole process of generating a new label record or a new submission record. To reprint the labels that were already generated, look at the radio button menu items, which will be defaulted to Unprinted Submissions. Select Outstanding Submissions that have not been received by the lab, then select Search. Now, from the recently submitted items listed, use the checkbox on the left to select all of the labels that still need to be printed. Next, choose Print Selection in the upper right and select the printer. If you don't have a thermal label printer or any specific label printer, you can print these submissions using the original SIF on A4 or letter-size paper. There will be 5 records per A4 or letter sheet of paper. Cut off each label, wrap the label around the bottle, secure with tape, and send to the lab. This label contains all of the information that the lab requires to process the sample. Track the progress of your sample submissions by clicking Outstanding Submissions Received by Lab. Next, click Search to view the samples for which labels have been printed that have also been received by the lab, but for which you have not yet received results. This search indicates samples that have been received by the lab and are still being processed. Likewise, returning to the Samples menu at the top and selecting Sample Status will show all of the samples that have been received by the lab that are currently processing and their status. This information will include how many tests have been completed and how many tests are still outstanding. There is no information populating in this example because we've only just now generated the labels and our samples have not yet reached the laboratory. When the samples arrive at the laboratory, the labels are scanned and the data will appear in the sample status screen. Assistance options are available under the Help menu at the top of the Webtrieve online application, including a user manual. Thank you for joining this ALS Webtrieve tutorial. If you have additional questions about Webtrieve Online or Webtrieve mobile app functionality, or if you have specific questions about test results within Webtrieve, please contact your local ALS laboratory.